Hello, I'm Lauren, and this is Improving the World. I'm an international improviser based in Hong Kong, and I speak with amazing improv women all over the world. Today, I speak with Jet Eveleth. She is an American improviser based in Los Angeles, and we are going to get deep with this one, people. We're talking about both clowning, ooh, light, interesting, and spirituality and surrender. So we are going to mesh the two and talk about how surrendering and fully opening up in an improv context is part and parcel with clowning and how you engage people fully on stage. Ooh, get ready. Today we're going to talk about both your clowning as well as your spiritual side and this idea of surrendering. Both the clowning, the improviser, you're really addicted to the laugh. Talk to me about the different kinds of laughter that there are and how that initially got you interested in clowning.
I love what is sometimes called the primary laugh or primal laugh. There's lots of different names for it, but you can look this up on YouTube. There's great TED Talks about it. It's this deep, deep belly laugh. And the idea is that we developed it millions of years ago. It was a form of probably release. The idea that we are no longer in a survival state and we realize, oh, survival is not the issue right now. It was used as social bonding. For example, let's say we heard a noise in the bush. We're like, oh my God, that's a tiger. And then we just realized that really it was our drunk uncle who just fell over. We all laugh from that deep place because it's like, oh, survival is no longer the issue. So that's what makes it social bonding. Versus super primary needs like food and procreation, they're always going to trump laughter. We're not going to be laughing if we're starving.
Right.
You know what I mean? But once all our basic needs are taken care of, there's that opportunity to celebrate life. And it has this beautiful sound. It sounds deep and goofy. Millions of years later, we developed a secondary laugh. And this one was more like a polite smile. It's like a social laugh where your boss says a joke and you're like, oh, they think that's funny, so I should laugh in order to get their approval. That laugh has a different sound to me and it's fine. But actually, as I get older and older, I'm more like, ugh, what a waste. In one of the TED Talks I was watching, she was saying that we get better at discerning the laugh as we age. It's true. And I think part of it is you don't want to put up with as much bullshit as you get older. Little old men and little old ladies, they have no time for it. So I started though very early on being like, there's a different quality of laugh. To compare it, it'd almost be like a real orgasm and a fake orgasm. You don't want your partner to have a fake orgasm. No, don't do the one like, yeah, that's good. You don't want that. It doesn't do anything. You want them to lose control. There's such a pleasure in that. I will only want the laugh from an audience that they can't control, that I stole from them. I don't even know why I was laughing at you. I can't explain why I was laughing. And it was a good laugh. If you chose it, it meant that it came from your brain. I don't want the laugh from your brain. I want the laugh from your soul.
Yeah. Oh, that was ghoulish and I liked it.
And it's not about stealing the soul, it's about exciting the soul. Because when you excite somebody else's soul, you're truly connected. As human beings, we often like to try to connect on superficial things because we feel like we're connecting, like on politics. But when you have a connection with somebody that's much more soulful, it's why people are very close to their animals, because we connect on a soulful level. We don't talk politics, we don't talk weather, but we're connecting through like holding and playing. Ooh, play is such a language of love.
Yeah.
And so that's what we're doing as improvisers, is we're playing as our language of love with the audience.
Although I do know a Saint Bernard that reads the paper.
Well, you know, there's always one or two.
How did that pulling laugh from the soul and igniting it connect in with clowning and the work that you were doing there?
I remember that I liked that sound so much that one time when I was at Improv Olympic, which is now called I.O., I heard a belly laugh that was so deep, and I was in the bathroom, that I ran out and peeked out of the bathroom with my pants still down around my ankles to see what was happening on stage, because I needed to know what was getting that laugh, because that was the only kind of laugh I wanted. A moment that you'll always remember of like, okay, nobody saw me, good, but I had to see what was happening. My group that had come up in Chicago was already pursuing that kind of laugh. It was unspoken, but we all loved that deep belly laugh. And in order to get that deep belly laugh, you have to work more from your body. You have to work more from your heart. You can't work from your wit, because the wit excites the wit of others. The heart excites the heart of others. I noticed when I would sneak out of the bathroom and look out, it was always physical work. It was always emotional work. So I was like, okay, that's where I gotta go. One of the guys in my group said, Jet, I did this class, and it's not an improv class, but it's called Clown. And I thought of you the whole time. And I was one of those people, I never questioned anything. When students come up to me and they say, you know, I'm thinking about taking an improv class. Which one should I take? It's so funny. In my mind, I never had that question because they took everything. Anything that had anything to do with the art form, I was just, and I worked 3 jobs to make it work because I was like, I gotta learn it all.
Yeah.
I was like, great, no questions. I just show up. What I found in clown was that they only focused on that kind of laugh. And if you got the other kind of laugh, they said, what are you doing? Because it's at the cost, because they compete for time and space, the 2 kinds of laughs. You can't have both. It's like a yin and yang effect where one will rise as the other shrinks. So I was like, oh my God, this is perfect. This is sort of what I already believed, which is if I use my wit, it will be at the cost of these belly laughs. So first class, we did dodgeball for like an hour and a half until everyone was exhausted. And then we started doing the work. But what I found was when you're totally exhausted, you had no adrenaline, you had no facade, you had no filters. So I saw people work from a very raw place, and I was able to work from a much more raw place. And I was able to get the deepest laughs I had ever gotten. It's like, oh no, I'm in trouble. Now I've got something else I'm also obsessed with. And they took one girl and she was very stiff and she had a hard time being authentic, and they ran her outside and they ran her outside. They brought her in. She still was stiff. They ran her outside. They kept doing this because they cared so much. And then they brought her in, and finally it was like I saw a wall come down. I was like, Gum. She had no energy to be fake anymore. Then she just said her lines and it was beautiful and it was hilarious. Yeah, because sometimes you have to exhaust the ego. It's why people often drink before shows, is because they're trying to loosen the ego.
Yeah.
But the problem with that is you also make it messy. And we want to be sharp. We want to be crystal clear. The better way to do it is actually just to exhaust the body sometimes. The body's very stiff and we're working from survival. And sometimes you exhaust the body and the ego's just like, I'm so tired. It can sometimes work in your favor.
Thank you for saying that. I also do not like augmentation options before a show, but I completely hear what you're saying. And I love that.
We have to learn how to take the edge off. And I understand that. And all too often it will be alcohol, but there are other ways to take the edge off. You have to put those in place. You have to have your thing that centers you. Really, the way to take the edge off is to have a practice that reminds you that it is not that important. It is both super important and also non-important at the exact same time. The trick is to live that way so that when you get on stage, you're not trying to be different than you are.
Yeah. Jet, how did your improv shift when you started doing clowning? Did one inform the other or vice versa?
Yes, they informed each other dramatically. But what was so interesting is I was studying all these gurus, these beautiful European clown teachers. They were stripping me of all these habits. And then I would go to do improv and the wit would be strong again. And I'd be like, how do I hold on to what they taught me? Or sometimes it would be like, I got to use some wit in order to stay in the momentum of what's happening. And I was like, oh, I have to decide. And so what I found is I had to make sure I only played with groups in improv that were playing from a place of the heart and the body. If it was wit, we were not serving each other. It was like 2 shows that were so opposite that neither was blossoming. So I had to remember that there is something beautiful about improv, about being like, what kind of work do we like? And when we all like the same kind of work, that's a team. Oh, I like to just work for my wit. And somebody's like, I like to work for my soul. You both might not get to the highest highs of your work. You just go off and do your own thing and find the people that are right for you.
So now, have you found that your formats have changed, or the content that you're coming out with, I assume, has changed?
I find that when I improvise, I am surrendering more, because the clown is about surrendering to the moment. It makes me a much better improviser. You can't be thinking 3 steps ahead and truly expand in the moment. You deal best with the moment when you're in the moment. And I always tell people you do your best improvising when you're truly improvising. So if you have ideas, it might keep your show small and safe. I would say not much has changed since I decided the people I want to play with. That's the most important thing, is like having a similar vision of what you love. But my improv has gotten more emotional and more physical for sure. Content will always change from that. It's going to be far more dangerous as you become more physical and emotional. Someone had told me recently that he ran into a friend of mine in New York and he said, oh, we talked about playing with you. And that what's so wild about playing with you is you are just so daring. And he's like, it's rare to play with somebody who's so daring. And I don't think of myself as daring, but I do think that's an element of the clown. I mean, it's partly who I was. That's why I was attracted to clown. But I don't think of myself as daring. I think of myself as being open in the moment. But it reads to somebody as like, wow, she'll do anything. But when you expand the moment that you have and you make it bigger, you see more options. And when you see more options, you get to choose an option that's more dangerous. But you don't see that dangerous option if you keep it small.
Yeah. Ooh, we're getting deep here. I like this. You have a spiritual side as well. How did your spiritual side grow alongside your improv side? I gather that they both have grown with life. Yeah.
I mean, you never think of yourself as spiritual. I don't think of myself as spiritual, but I'm told I'm spiritual. It's kind of like the same way I don't really think of myself as a woman, but I'm like, the world tells me I'm a woman. So I'm like, okay, great, call me she, I don't care. So, but to me, improv is spiritual because the more you are open to what is, the more options you have, the more freedom you have, the more fun you have. And that's the same in life. All the expressions and outcomes of that are the same. And so I felt like the more I was doing improv, that was about surrendering, the more I bring that into my life, and my life was more fun. Vice versa, the more I let go in my life, I was able to let go on stage. So I was like, oh, these aren't separate things. This is just a 5-inch platform. We can't think of it as anything else. If you want to get better at improv, you got to figure out what kind of improv you want to do and do the exact same practices in your life so that it's in your bones. So that when you step on the stage, you don't have to change. I found that improv and clown, to me, they're quite similar, and I like where they live, where they cross over. And when I say clown too, I'm talking about not circus clown, red-nosed clown. This is just highly physical and emotional theater. What we'd say is that it's comedy that doesn't come from the brain. Simple definition. It can become far more complex than that. But modern clown, the way that we see it in people like Will Ferrell and Chris Farley, and definitely Charlie Chaplin, Lucille Ball, they are kind of like their child self. That's what the clown is they're not witty. They're showing you themselves cut open the way a 4-year-old would. And they tend to have a feel and an emotion to them because they're not covering their experience. So if they want something, you see the want in their eyes. So that's what I mean by clown. I should clarify, because some people might be watching this and going, oh, like Red Nose, Barnum and Bailey. No, that is another kind of clown, but we mean it different in the theatrical world. We mean it as how you're funny when you're not trying to be funny. That's your clown. And when you work from that place, it's very, very engaging. It's so compelling. Spiritual component. I do feel like when I studied with these clown teachers, they would say things like, you have to bring yourself to the stage. You have to be here and now. And I remember getting the chills. That's just true. And I'm thinking, oh my God, I don't have to keep what I believe in life and what I believe on stage separate anymore. And I remember getting a note from a producer from a sketch show saying, now remember, don't bring too much of yourself to it, to the show in general or to any of the characters. And I thought, that doesn't ring true to me. You have to bring your heart and soul to every character. Don't get me wrong. They didn't mean it as far as the accent or dialect or the way the character moved. They just mean bringing all of your heart to the work. And I was like, no, no, no. That is a record scratch moment of like, that's all you have is your heart. You have to bring your heart to the work. I love those moments where you're like, I know what I believe, because it will feel like a record scratch. If somebody's like, don't bring too much heart to the work, you're like, I don't know if I want to be in work that you can't bring too much heart to. What I mean by heart is a sense of humor in the heart, not a sadness, but a sense of lightness as well.
You're talking about surrender and being present tense. How do you do that? How do you surrender in the moment? How do you, Jet, choose to filter out noise and be present? That is probably one of those things in life that's easier said than done. And I think for many, maybe they want to be present and surrender and bring themselves fully, wholly, intellectually, spiritually in their center, in their core. And they're like, I don't know how to do that.
It's probably the hardest thing in the world, because it's the only thing you don't do. To let go means that you can't have any effort. You want it too bad and you're gripping too hard, you're not surrendering. But I do have daily practices that help. And I have teachers that I love to read, Eckhart Tolle and Byron Katie and Alan Watts, because they are so graceful at surrendering. And so to be able to see someone do it is one way. Use lighthouses. Wim Hof, he does breath work. He's just such a lighthouse of a human being. That's one way. A daily practice of meditation, yoga, qigong, tai chi. It could be running, but I do think a daily practice to keep yourself connected to your body. You want to stay connected and descended into the body so that you can listen to your beingness. And it takes a certain kind of courage too. So you got to be okay with dying over and over and over again. There's been so many times where I have mourned, bawled for the person I was because I had to let them go. Are you okay with letting versions of yourself go? It never happened where I didn't cry as I transformed. Non-attachment is the key to surrender. If you want to surrender but you don't want to let go of stuff, good luck. But if you're like, no, I really want to approach improv differently, are you ready to die 1,000 deaths?
I mean, wow. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Because people say they do. And I say, I believe you. I believe there's something very deep inside of you that's true. But what I also believe is the you that's talking to me right now may not be willing to let go. And so it may not happen in this lifetime. So I like to really embrace the idea of death as a beautiful thing, literal death. Because if you're like, oh, I'm going to die anyway, well, then why not have these mini deaths? Why not just keep dying before the final transformation, before I cross over? Because otherwise playing it safe makes the game so boring.
I think there's a double entendre there as well. You're talking about playing it safe life, and we're talking about improv and playing as well, and not playing safe within improv. This also fits into the discussion about spiritualism and different belief systems. For your perspective, what do you think about trying to or not trying to take the path of least resistance? I see you rocking with joy, ready for this one.
Similar to what we just talked about as far as surrender and the path of least resistance, you have to have this really laser sharp mindfulness. Otherwise, you will live in old patterns. If you live in old patterns, you will do stuff that might have served you in the past but isn't serving you now. Stuff that now you are putting wrenches and stuff because this is an old pattern you used to do. And even though it's so hard, your body's so used to doing it. So you have to stop. Yeah. And that mindfulness has to come in and you go, wait a minute, is this really the easiest thing? You have to freeze time. You have to have an interesting relationship to time and space where you're willing to slow down and be still enough to witness yourself and say, am I on board with this life?
So being more literal and with improv, are you saying that it is important to take the path of least resistance, to just do what feels natural and to just be present? Or are you saying rather the opposite, or maybe both, that the path of least resistance is the easy path and therefore we should not take it, we should challenge ourselves and go against?
Most times I will say, for me, I approach improv like a keto, which is I use what's already there to play with it, to give more momentum. So I take what's already there. It's so fun to take some sticks and to shake them and to throw them on the ground and then go, they landed that way, and now I'll move them just slightly, and boom, we have a house with a child in it, and the mother's coming home, and the child thought the mother was dead, and boom, we're in a scene. That's so much more fun to me than coming out and laying each stick and going, nah, maybe there, and hold on, I'm going to have you help me in a second, but let me be in charge of it. Like, that's how most people approach improv, as if it's two solo shows that are in agreement of not messing each other up, you know? And what beautiful improv to me is, and hilarious, it's the same thing to me, is that it's like you just lay one tiny brick down, one brick, and together we just continue to witness. Now, one of the things that I see in improv is most people are not willing to go slow early on in the rehearsal process. In the first, say, you know, improv, we're still young. In the first 20 years of improv, you're still a young improviser, I would say. So for the first 20 years of improv, you should really be doing Tai Chi of improv. And then what you find one day is, even after doing it, say 20 years, you'll probably mostly sometimes go fast, but you'll still sometimes go slow, because sometimes slow is what's right. Let's say you get terrible news in an improv scene. It's very, very rare that somebody gets shocking news and that they quickly react. You know, if someone said your mom's dead, you would go, oh my God, that's so crazy. You would have to absorb, because shocking information is coming at you, and boom, your body has to process. That's like a ton landing on you. Nobody is hit by a ton and then stands up. Most of the time in improv, people can't go slow enough. And I think part of it is when we're really slow and we're really still, we're close to ourselves. We're close to who we are, and that's terrifying. So instead, we live in survival state, and we live in this adrenaline state on stage of just like, let's survive it, let's talk, let's use our wit, we'll get through it, we'll both stand here about 3 feet apart, we'll both try to be as clever as we can, and then we'll get off stage and we'll have a beer and we'll say, boy, did we survive. You got a funny joke, I got a funny joke, great. Improv can be so much more than that. It can be two people dreaming together, and they can be living in the dream. How often in life do we share a dream with someone at the same time? And when you share the dream and it's woven together, it's magic and it's sacred. No other art form can compare to the improvise arts, because improv has the most energy potential. It can be the worst thing, it can be the greatest thing. When you see the greatest thing, it changes you.
I feel like that was a circular circus reference to The Greatest Thing, The Greatest Show on Earth, that merry-go-round behind me. Whoa, I just saw that on many planes at the same time. What are your words of wisdom? So
She doesn't like that I was ignoring her, so I heard her little squeaks.
what is your dog's name?
Honey Bear.
Jet and Honey Bear. If you could speak to the younger version of you, to your improv peers, or to people who have never found improv before, tried it, and might watch this video, what are your words of wisdom?
Whew. I'm so careful with words of wisdom because, we might say something that we think is wise, but once again, when we die, we realize when we're reborn, that wasn't so wise. The version that is alive right now, what I believe about improv would have to be true about life. Otherwise, I think it's hypocritical. There's a lack of truth if it's only true on stage and it's not true in life. And I truly believe that the only thing that's true in life are paradoxes. Improv has to be incredibly important to you, and it has to be not important at all. So you have to be able to live in both of those spaces when you're on stage, that you are so committed. And at the same time, the back of your brain knows this is just making fun of life. It's not that meaningful. At the same time, what's more meaningful than art? That's what improv is. But at the same time, if you think it's super meaningful, then there's no lightness to it, and it's not comedy. So you can just keep going through that, all the paradoxes that we live in. And the work that we do in clown is all about the paradox. Profane, and it's also sacred at the exact same time. I look for that in my improv work, which is everything I do, I want it to have both the elements of light and dark and yin and yang. Even when I'm teaching, from the most simple thing of, hey, if the last scene was 2 people seated, the next scene, get them up on their feet. If the last scene was loud, make this one soft. We're always looking for yin and yang balance. We're looking to balance our work. And improv, we're always looking for balance within the show and the entire show, but also within the piece and also within the moment. The way it looks in the moment is I'm suffering as my character, but my eyes reveal that I know I'm having a good time. Not my face, I'm not smiling, but if you look into my eyes, like the eyes of Will Ferrell, you can look into his eyes and see that even when he's angry, he's having fun, because the eyes are the windows. It's not like the biggest hippie of all time, but it's the windows of our soul. Yeah. Making sure that you're always embracing both things at once when you're working, being as vulnerable as you can on stage, as committed as you can, even though the back of you knows that this is all just for fun. I see a lack of commitment, and that's why I don't go see as many shows anymore. Not that there used to be more commitment. It's just that once you've seen 7,000 shows, you're like, okay. I hope that I disagree with myself down the road, because that means I'm changing and I'm growing. We want to be able to laugh at ourselves right now. We want to be able to laugh at ourselves 2 years ago. Like, what an idiot paradox. That has nothing to do with comedy.
If folks want to see a show, take a class, if you're teaching or throw money at you, how can they find you?
I run a thing called Clown Church LA. Now we're doing it twice a week on Zoom. It's the basics of clown and improv mixed with that idea of surrender and presence work. Nothing's worth watching unless there's presence underneath it. That's what I truly believe. I don't care even how clever it is. If there's no presence, it's so thin. I work from a place of developing presence, and then from there we develop the comedy. Clown Church LA on Instagram, Facebook at Clown Church LA. I have a website. I do live shows, and I have a clown troupe called the Electric House here in Los Angeles, where we do clown shows that are improvised shows with elements of clown.
Oh, yes, please.
The danger of one with the dreaming of improv. It's so fun.
Thank you for your time and your energy. It was lovely speaking with you. This is Improving the World. Look for more. Thank you all so very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So, did you love the video? If you did, please say kind, wonderful things in the comments down below. And you could subscribe if you feel like sassy, and look for more Improving the World.